Zach, you want to talk for me so I can make sure audio's good?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Zach, you want to talk for me so I can make
Can
sure
anyone
audio's
hear
good?
us on stream? I'm jumping into the stream right now to
Yep,
see.
sounds good.
Oh,
Cool.
yep, I can hear. All right, cool.
Alrighty, guys, welcome to the One Leaf Weekly stream. As always, we're running over project updates and then some fun topics. We have Zach, Susie, Sabian here today, and our pal Nick joining us. We'll just hop right into it and get the project updates out of the way. So on the One Leaf website, we started the backend migration to Vapor 4, which is like basically just upgrading the server's version. V1 of the designs is 1 to 2 pages away from all the designs being done. So then once those are done, then the front end development will be swiftly done after that. Swift. OL Go. Zach, I don't think there was any progress this week, right?
I think it was just a little progress on the login screen, but nothing too much since we're still kind of waiting on designs.
It seemed like this week was a mental health week for most people, which is good. Swift UI Kit version 1.1.0 was released, which is congrats, Zach.
Yeah, that was so that had
Give me just a second. Let me reconnect. Discord's being dumb. There we go. Try talking now. Hello?
hello.
There you are. Man, everybody's voice is freaking out. I don't know what's going on.
Hello. So we just got the view bugs fixed, and then Oscar modifiers go in. So
Perfect. For Philodex, it's still in planning phase. Leaf down, there was work done, but nothing like milestone worthy to bring up. Economy manager, Stefano, Max, and I had a meeting last week and got a lot of planning done. I need to move them to Figma. They're currently doing their UI mockups in PowerPoint. It actually is pretty good to like show out each of the pages, but I think Figma will be way better. So we probably have one more week of planning on Economy Manager before we start doing anything. Bread for the Journey, the wireframes for all of the UI are in progress. In projects, oops. That's a typo on my part. Okay, so Zach and I did some discussion this week about some just organizational things. So the first one that we talked about was the One Leaf YouTube channel. So what we were discussing is, as we get more and more people that are interested in mentoring and making YouTube videos or doing their own streams, we were trying to figure out how we should handle whose channel those should be on and how we can help promote people that aren't on our channel. Um, so the conclusion that we came to is all of the One Leaf community streams, for example, like the One Leaf website meetings, the weekly One Leaf stream, or any like co-streams like Zach and I did that Computer Science Fundamentals, those would all be on the One Leaf YouTube itself. But like personal projects or tutorials, things that are community made are up to the members' discretion. So they could either put it on our YouTube channel, we could upload it for them, or they can put it on their channel. And when we get the One Leaf website up and going, there'll hopefully be some way for us to link to their social media. We don't really have a way for that to um, be set in stone in Discord right now. We do have the streaming schedule channel, so if you're interested in starting your own stream and talking about something, we can add you to the streaming schedule, so that way people can see when you're going to be streaming. Anything else to add to that, guys?
Leading into the topic of we have the One Leaf calendar, so we'll be sending invites to all the events going on. So feel free to accept any of those invites and put them down on your calendar.
Yeah, it's really to help solve that problem of, oh yeah, we talked about a meeting in Discord, but it got lost in Discord, and then here's the meeting day, you forget that the meeting is that day. So we're really trying to solve that with our Google Calendar, which again, Zach said you can just save those to your own calendar, and then it'll remind you.
Perfect. So this week, it looks like was it this week or like last week that GitHub sponsors was finally published?
I'm not gonna say because I think it was a while ago and maybe I just like looked at it, but it was recently. Yeah, I'd
Okay.
say months.
So, GitHub sponsors is kind of like a Patreon for a GitHub account or for an organization. And basically, what it allows you to do is it allows people to sponsor you or your community's work, and basically say, "Yeah, we would like to support you." So, for example, Zach and I signed up for the sponsor program just to see what it would look like, and we're working on getting a template out there so that um, you know you guys have an idea of what you can put for how people could sponsor you. So, just to throw out some ideas, for example, um, things are the sponsorships are broken down into tiers, just like Patreon. So you could say like, you could sponsor me for $1 a month just because you like my work. You could sponsor me for $5 a month, and I could put a thank you or a sponsorship on one of my repositories, saying this repository was sponsored or supported by sponsor X, and then you could go up from there to figure out what you want to do. Um, so we were thinking that later on in the OneLeaf website, we'll add a spot on user profiles to for people to be able to donate. So, for example, if someone does, a lot of work on the OneLeaf website or something, and Zach and I are really grateful because it saved us a lot of time, maybe we would want to donate. Or maybe we do some work for a nonprofit and they really liked what we did. Then whoever worked on that project, maybe they'd sponsor those members. Those type of things is what we're thinking about. Also, maybe if you're making lots of cool YouTube content and people are really grateful that you've helped them so much, maybe they want to sponsor you on your Patreon or your GitHub sponsors. Um, we're still thinking through the process on how we want to support that because we don't want to over support or under support anyone. Um, but we would like to be able to help people that feel grateful, give some sort of support to those that have helped them. That's really the big idea here. Anything to add to that, Zach?
Um, I don't have anything except for I guess that like nitro discussion of like if someone nitro boosts the Discord, that's kind of like also a donation to us, but we can't. It's not direct. Like so, if you're thinking of or like boosting or anything for the Discord, or you don't know what it is, there's like certain tiers, and level 1 tier is at 2 boosts, and level 2 jumps up to 15. So it's not like a easy process and that stuff, and we're at 4 boosts. So yeah, I leading into OneLeaf can also be on the sponsors, and since we're a 501c3, we could actually count as a tax deductible.
Depending on the country you live in.
Yeah, depending on the country. I'm speaking from the United States. But yeah, that's all that I got for that.
The way it works is on someone's profile or on a community's profile, you'll see a link to sponsor them. I don't want to pull up Zachariah's profile specifically because I'm not trying to advertise us, um, but that's where you'd find it. I'm not sure which version of the OneLeaf website that'll be rolled out in, but we'd definitely like to be able to support you guys. Okay, so the next update. So a lot of these updates are us shifting the community towards leaving the Discord for communication purposes and using the OneLeaf website for everything else. That way we have some sort of the website will still be used for communication, but it'll also be used to find out how to get active on a project, find people's resources that they're interested in, and learn more about the members and whatnot. So as we make that migration, we're trying to figure out ways that we can make the community better. And the next one is that we're gonna the current channel we've been using to post resources is the resources channel. And the way that worked is you'd post a link to the resource, and in the resource discussion channel, you chit chat about the resource in there. That way, the resources channel stays full of just links. Um, we've had a little bit of feedback on that, and it's kind of just like a drop place. It felt like people to just drop their articles and not give any context and whatnot. And Zach and I found that that was somewhat of a problem. So what we're going to do in the meantime is we're going to archive the resources channel here soon, which basically means all the resources will still be there, but you can't add anything more to it. And what we're going to replace that with is a link to a Google forum. And
Uh,
go ahead.
it's already been archived.
Oh, okay, cool.
So you'll see if you go to the resources channel, you'll see that there's a pin, and you can't type anymore in there. But there's 2 links, and there's a submit a new resource, and the resources link. And the submit one will take you to a Google form, which will allow you to, submit the resource that you find and give a little bit more context to it, make it so it's categorized a little bit better, get tags, and kind of get more of the information that we expect on the One Leaf website. So we could potentially transfer this to the One Leaf website when we get it up. Instead, the Discord is just, links. This even categorizes it by level or kind of the resource, and that's even optional. But once you submit one on here, you can go to the other link and you will see all of the resources in an Excel or whatever, the Google Sheets. And that link allows you to comment. So that's why we got rid of the resources discussion, because now you can fully just comment on the whole Google Sheets form right there, and that'll auto fill out. So yeah, that's why we did that, because I think there's a lot more power uses in having Google Sheet. I think you can copy this, make your own versions of it, and other things like that, and have a little bit better things than just scrolling through one channel where there's just links. And like some of the URLs are just ridiculously big, and you have to hope that the preview is good. And there's previews that are just, the title of it. So hopefully with this, we can get a little bit more information about it. The title, the tags are really nice. So if it's like React, if it's front end, if it's design, or maybe if it's just, totally like life stuff where it's meditating, yoga, this is a lot more generic, and we don't get a notification every single time someone posts a resource. Yeah, so there's a lot of benefits to this, but this is also a temporary solution, and until we move to the One Leaf website.
And the big deal with this is that we want people to be able to search for articles in the future, right? Like if you add a tag for open source or Swift or C Sharp or whatever it is in the future, that'll allow people to search for these articles, and it won't just be this big Dropbox that you have to search for things that are relevant to you. Zach, what is the recommendation for commenting? Like highlighting an entire row to comment about it?
I don't have a preference. I mean,
Okay.
I would probably do like click on the resource URL. At least I would do that. I don't know if I would do the whole row or that stuff. I would probably comment on a description or a tag and say it's like this, this might be good to have this tag or something like that. We do allow the ability for the original person, whoever submit the form. The Google form allows you to go back in and edit and resubmit. And I think that'll change the rows. But like I said, this is a temporary solution, and I don't know how efficient or how well the Google form acts with the paired Google Sheet. So we will just cross our fingers with that. But yeah, feel free to share our links. We really just want to capture this and actually get it in a form that we can import into the website once we get that up. And if you had these and you submitted one, you can put that as one of your posts on the One Leaf website, because that's kind of what we're aiming to do.
Perfect. Um, I need to add to the weekly announcement about the One Leaf calendar. I forgot to do that. What was the other weekly announcement that we were going to do? Oh, maybe that was it. Anyways, so on to the fun topics. So we had two requests for things to talk about. The first one was AI or artificial intelligence, and the second was DevOps. We weren't given a whole lot of context on what we should talk about with AI, but the person that requested it basically said their only experience with AI was thinking about robots. So we did think it was kind of a fun topic to just chit chat about and give what limited knowledge we have on the topic, just to hopefully provide some insight. Zach, is there anything that you had off the top of your head for chit chatting about it?
There's a few different types of AI. Um, oh, Arcus is adding if it was the meditation session. Yeah, you hit it at the perfect time. That was the breathing exercise right there, Arcus. Um,
I was reading. I'm sorry.
but for AI, the first thing I think of is machine learning, like AI and kind of the new, I wouldn't say new, but a lot more of the more advanced, and then more game AI, where it's more of a rule set and it just follows some rules and it seems more complex than it is. And those are the two different ones that I kind of separate it down to. So that's at least where I would start with it, but I don't know. There might be another one that doesn't come to mind.
So usually when I think of AI, yeah, I do kind of break it down into two things. Like most people think, like when they think AI, it's like, oh, it's gonna take over the world, like Stuxnet, robots, those type of things. But when you get down to it, it's broken down into like several different fields. The ones that come to mind are image processing, right? So if you get an image, trying to figure out what's in it, like CAPTCHAs, for example. There are machine learning programs out there that CAPTCHAs are designed to make it hard for you to figure out what's in a CAPTCHA, but a machine learning algorithm could figure it out. We'll talk about a little bit more about how those algorithms would work. Other ones would be NLP, or natural language processing. So that would be like Siri, for example, or Cortana, or Alexa. Um, there's no programmer out there that's going to sit there and write. I mean, I don't want to say there's no, but no big company is going to let their programmers sit down and write, if our user says this, give them this response, and handle all of the possible responses. What they'll do is they'll use some sort of machine learning algorithm to kind of figure out how the accent should work, how they should respond, giving the, like, maybe the inflection of your voice, those type of things. So the two big topics are, I have this Apple video pulled up because I liked it in the past, but um, they have a kit called Core ML for machine learning, and the basis of machine learning is that you have some sort of model, right? And this model is what is representative of how it should treat the data, right? So, an example that I can think of that I worked with in the past would be, we had a model that would take in different data sets about weather data and try and figure out if there's a tornado in that weather data. Well, if you give it a bunch of data and then you give it the correct response, so you have two different types of machine learning: supervised and unsupervised, right? So if it's supervised, meaning you kind of watch it and mold it and kind of make sure that the model builds itself correctly, right? Because the model is kind of adaptive, right? So like if I keep feeding in weather data and telling it whether or not there is a tornado and the location of it, eventually the machine learning model will adapt and kind of figure out um, what correlations there are that maybe a human can't see. Unsupervised would just be saying, here's a bunch of data, kind of hopefully realign yourself in the future. It could drastically veer off in one direction and be completely wrong, and that's why um, supervised learning can be useful. Um, an example that Apple was looking at was, it would take different pictures of flowers, I believe, and tell you what type of flower it was. If I'm remembering correctly, Zach, I know we watched that video together. It was a long time ago.
I think it was roses or strawberries.
Something like that, yeah.
But yeah, pretty much where they trained it and they could feed it images of it and then it would classify the percentage of probability that it thought it was whatever, it was guessing.
So that's typically how machine learning will work, right? Is you'll train your model. You'll literally train it like you'd train your child to do a sport, right? And then when it's done training, you have this model that, says, based on these things that are coming in, the input, here's what I expect to be coming out. And once it gets to a certain confidence level, maybe, you don't care if it's terribly accurate, maybe 90% accuracy is good enough, right? Or maybe you want to keep training the model until it's 99.99% accurate. And then once it's that accurate, you release it into the wild, right? And you say, so for example, I believe Google, their search engine, uses a form of machine learning, right? So They used to hire on interns, and what you would do is you would somebody would put in a query like what color is a golden retriever, and then they would look at the top 10 responses or so, and they would say, which one of these is the most accurate and which one of these are not accurate. And over time, the Google search engine machine learning algorithm kind of picked up on that based on the massive amount of data that it has to make correlations off of. Yeah, Arcus, you're right. 90% is really good. Um, it also depends on the data sets that you have, right? Like if we were talking about that rose example, if you gave it one picture of a rose and one picture of dirt, and it was 100% accurate, that doesn't mean a whole lot when you try and shove a million different pictures inside of there, right? So sample size is huge. Um, a lot of statistics is useful for this. This gets a lot into data science as well. Zach and I aren't particularly um, specialized in this field, but we've come across knowledge and have read things enough to feel somewhat comfortable talking about the topic.
Yeah, and if we're gonna talk about like how Apple does it, at least I can speak on using vision, or I haven't used the natural language processing, but using the Vision API, or just using a machine learning model or a trained model, and you just plug it in, and I can run the camera, and now this trained model that I just plugged into the app actually tries to identify all the objects at my desk. And I could take another model on the internet, supplied by many people, or many open source communities that work together on this, and you use any of the models and plug and play, and different models will identify different models have different size. One might be bigger, one might be smaller. But Apple supplied a little of these, or like links to find where some of these are. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but um, I feel bad because I haven't looked in it a bit. It doesn't apply to my work. I mean, AR is more applying to my work for like ticket scanning, but I don't know. Like,
It's something that we've kind of looked into but haven't specialized. Like we've looked
mhm.
into it out of interest, but not out of need for our profession. Um, so some things that might help you in your research if you're interested in the topic. There's different types of machine learning algorithms. Some of the ones that come off the top of my head would be a neural network, and that would pretend like think of a neural network kind of like a brain, right? It has different nodes, like different neurons in your brain, and it would have connections in between them. And the more that connection is perceived as correct, the stronger that connection gets. Just as similar to how your brain works, where the more you recall a specific memory, the stronger the connection between one neuron is to another. So it kind of simulates the way the brain works, which is kind of cool. There's convoluted neural networks. Don't ask me what they are, I just know the term. There's. What are some other ones? I can't think of any off the top of my head. If you do want to play with machine learning, one of the bigger players out there right now is called TensorFlow. And basically, it's like a machine learning platform that allows you to use Python and I believe Swift now, right, Zach?
Yep, you can use quite a few
Oh, actually, you can
different
use JavaScript
of
too.
your APIs. Yeah,
Huh.
I think it's weird because Python's the most popular. I know that.
Oh, they have Java
I
too.
don't know how popular the other ones, but then TensorFlow for Swift, or Swift for TensorFlow, is pretty popular. But I don't know if like a lot of people use it comparatively.
Arcus said he was using natural language processing to make an app that a user could move an NPC or some kind of 2D really basic game just by writing sentences like go right and turn right after you see a bench. That's really cool. I think that'd be cool to use a machine learning algorithm for a text adventure.
Yeah, no, that'd be cool. Or a grocery app.
Yeah, where are the peaches? Turn left at the next aisle. Um, okay, so there's some other topics that we can talk about just in general about AI. Another one would be ethics, right? So like the ethics of machine learning, because there's a lot of fear that comes into uh, artificial intelligence because a lot of people just don't understand how it works. They assume that if you let one of these things just run off into the wild, it's going to take over the world and whatnot. Um, and while that is a valid fear, uh, it's not necessarily possible in the current field right now, right? You could like at like you could have something that would like I don't know, every time it gets to one device it searches for another device, and then once it has all the devices that it can find, it does some I don't know, malware attack and kills all the computers in the world. That's like the most scary
Oh,
thing that I can
see,
think
I,
of.
I don't I don't even think people think of that. I think people think of the Terminator, and it's like once you give a robot a gun and an AI, we're all screwed. But people don't think of like AI viruses and like other attacks like that on like bigger systems than locally or on your device.
I think one of my favorite episodes of Futurama, I don't remember the name of it, but Bender the robot, uh, the kid in the show, Farnsworth's sons, overclocks his processor in like a really old robot, and he all of a sudden starts reading super fast, and he starts learning a bunch, and then he starts overheating, so he plugs in like two like water cooler tanks into his sides to cool him down, and he starts just getting so like faster and faster and acquiring all the information, and it eventually becomes like God. Uh, and I thought that was kind of funny that they'd even think that that's possible. And I'm not going to say it's not possible, but like the programming required to make that even feasible, it's not something that I think we could do in this day and age, or even anytime soon. But who knows what the CIA is up to?
Illuminati.
Illuminati confirmed. Uh, the last topic that I want to talk about for AI, game AI, right? The common way that I know of that AI works is basically you'd give your like AI would be used for like NPCs, non-player characters, right? Like maybe you're playing like a stealth game like Assassin's Creed or something, and you have to tell the AI when they should be alert to your presence, right? If you were to just code a basic algorithm that says, if you're within 10 feet, the guy should know about you and start attacking you. Well, if you're on the other side of a wall not making any noise, that's going to be pretty annoying for a stealth game. So you can code in AI to basically say, if they're in a cone of sight, if they, if they happen to be in my, what's it called, like a patrol pattern, right? If they're walking back and forth between point A and point B, and you can get kind of complicated with the algorithms that you give it. And I don't think it necessarily has to do with machine learning, right? I mean, maybe it could learn based on inputs, but AI, like they are technically artificial intelligence, right? They're a being that follows a set of rules, deemed as intelligence to respond to certain events, right? Um, and that's about as complicated as I want to get into it. The one example that I do have off the top of my head of that, I went to a game developer meetup, and one of the guys that coded the AI pathing for, I think it was Guild Wars. I don't want to misquote. Some MMORPG. It was Guild Wars or World of Warcraft or something like that. But basically, the way the algorithm worked, right, is they'd have NPCs that would roam long distances. So what they did is they set up an AI pathing algorithm, and they would assign like weights to different paths, right? So let's imagine that they're walking from point A in one town to point B in one town, and they want them to, on average, walk on roads, right? So what they do is they'd say, the cost of walking on a road is cheap, whereas the cost of walking in a muddy field would be higher. So they'd be more likely to walk on a road. But if, let's say, for example, a player started attacking them, maybe the cost of going anywhere but directly away from the player is lower, so they'd always want to go away from or higher, sorry. So they'd always want to run directly, like perpendicular to the player or whatnot. Um, that's kind of an example that I have off the top of my head. Some common examples for AI would be pathfinding, knowing when the player is around, and maybe their gun mechanics if they're combat NPC.
Do you want to talk about the CS:GO bots kind of AI and how they actually use some, kind of cheats or hacks to?
The damn bots in CS:GO, dude. So, okay. forewarning, I haven't read into any of their programming or whatnot. I should have. That would have been a great topic to bring up with some knowledgeable background. But just from having 2,000 hours in the game, I can tell you right now that they add in kind of a mechanism that almost makes them behave like a very erratic player. So sometimes they will, like, if you're walking around a corner and you're making noise, they'll instantly flick around, do a 180, and shoot you in the head in one shot. And other times they'll miss like 40 bullets. Uh, and it's somewhat seemingly at random. I haven't noticed a pattern to it myself, so I wonder if they added just some level of randomness. It's like, you know what, this bot will be bad, and then next round he'll be good, or maybe if a team is losing, it'll make it do a little bit better. Um, but yeah, so they had to not only give the bot pathings that they saw were normal to players, but they had to implement all of their gun mechanics, teach you how to plant a bomb, um, basically to do everything a player can do. And in CS:GO, there's quite a different. There's quite a decent amount of differences. And yeah, I know Arcus plays a decent bit of CS:GO, and he said in the chat that yeah, CS:GO bots are cheating. I've noticed several times that they'll like shoot you through a wall, like when you're not making noise or something like that, and that's not a huge deal, right? Because if somebody leaves your team and they're like a competent player, you want to have a bot that can, not just run in and die every time. Yeah, and Arcus, you are right. Some of the bots respond with a skill level, and they have like a developer console where you can see what level the bots are. Um, so like depending on their skill level is their complexity of their algorithm, I assume. I think CS:GO bots are some of the more intelligent ones that I've seen in a video game. I hope that gave you guys a nice little overview of AI and machine learning. It's a really fun topic to look into. Um, Normally, when I talk to people about going for like a master's or doctorate degree in CS, it's, in my personal opinion, um, not terribly worth it unless you're going for something like machine learning, where you're going to want like a thesis and studying, some specialization of machine learning, because it is a really complicated field and it's very new, so it's a very experimental. So, a higher level degree would be worth it to get not only the credibility but the experience in working with something in the research field. So that's just my 2 cents there. Unless you have anything else to add, Zach, we can move on to DevOps.
Yeah, let's just move on.
Okay. Um, is DevOps okay? This is going to be a really dumb question. Does DevOps stand for developmental operations? That seems right.
Dude, I don't know. I'm not.
I'm
I'm
not a
not a
DevOps
master
guru.
at DevOps, dude. All I know is I know how to work my stack, and now I
Yeah.
heard this other thing, and I think they're just dedicated to how the system works, and kind of greasing the wheels of the good old machine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not.
So DevOps as a whole is like supporting developers to do their processes quicker, right? So I can think of a few examples of what would be included in what they would call a pipeline. Um, so like DevOps pipelines would be used to, okay, so let's say for example, I make a change to my code, right? And I have maybe a web application or an iOS app, something that's like deployed that my users use, right? Well, when I submit my code, I don't want to have to go manually rebuild that application, manually deploy it, deal with, all that jazz. There's tons of tools out there that would be included in a DevOps pipeline that would, for example, I submit my code to GitHub, it runs tests on it. If the tests pass, it will go start the build process. It'll build the application. Then when the application is done, it'll deploy it out automatically for you to maybe Amazon Web Services if that's where your app is hosted, or Heroku, or the iOS App Store, something like that. So that's the very very basic concept of DevOps. Some of the common tools that you'll see, you're going to want some sort of version control, so Git, GitLab, GitHub, something along those lines. If you're in the Microsoft environment, you'll be using Azure DevOps. And then once your code is up to a version control system, you'll want some sort of build and deployment server. So you'll look at Jenkins, Travis CI, Circle CI. CI stands for continuous integration. So you're continuously, meaning every time you make a change, integrating into your new environment. And then you want to have some CI and CD are the two things that typically go together, right? You have continuous integration and continuous deployment, right? Meaning when you make a change, you want it to be updated, right? Um, And common CD platforms, continuous development platforms, would be Jenkins would be one of the most common ones that I'm aware of. Zach, do you guys use Fastlane? Is that what it is for iOS?
Yeah, we use Fastlane. I'm a big fan of GitHub Actions are pretty good for CI/CD. But yeah, no, Jenkins is probably the most popular. Circle CI is pretty good, and Travis CI. I think they have CD capabilities, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Looking at the graphic you have, it's kind of weird.
yeah, this one's awful. Let's open up Circle CI real quick, just to show them. So, um, let me pull it open in another window just in case it shows my username and
Yeah,
whatnot.
Fastlane is just like a build tool for iOS or
So,
what is it? Arcus?
yeah,
Why don't you just join the
yeah,
chat and
Arcus, get in here and tell them how it works.
what are you doing, man?
um, so, Arcus, help us set up our workflow. So you can see we
Yeah,
have.
guys.
Is it Fardine? Is that whose voice? Oh no, it is Arcus.
No,
Okay,
no, me, Alex.
hi there.
I don't know what you were talking about in like last 2 minutes because probably I'm some back.
I was just moving over to open up Circle CI and kind of show them what we have set up.
Okay.
So you hopped in at the perfect time, so you can tell them how it works because I'm awful at this.
Yeah, basically, like you said, when you commit your changes to the GitHub repo, or it automatically starts your tests, and if the test passes, it will start like another job. Like we have tests, then build the application, then deploy it to AWS. Basically, it's kind of like simple pipeline. Yeah. Oh yeah, we are testing also the Docker image because sometimes it's kind of broken, but yeah.
So, for those unaware, Docker is a tool used for containerization, and what that means is you kind of bundle your application up and stick it inside of this container, and this container doesn't care what operating system you're running on. Some do, but it depends on your configuration. But basically, you could say, when I push this container, this bundle of code plus some configurations out to a server, it will handle plugging that code into maybe how your network interface works, right? So, like if you have an Nginx server running, the Docker container would kind of handle that interfacing for you. Anything else to add to that, Arcus?
Yeah, it's basically like it's a tool that later on you don't need to carry about on what environment you are running the application because the environment is inside of the container.
Yep. So you can see kind of the workflows we have here. We have a couple of them. So we have two separate workflows. One for the development branch and one for the master branch on our GitHub. So the master branch, what it does is it checks out the code, it tests the code, making sure that the tests pass, and then it deploys it out to Amazon Web Services and makes sure that it updates the code so that that way when we update our code on the master branch, oneleif.com gets those changes. The development branch does the same thing, but for dev.oneleif.com. So that way we have two separate websites. So that way we can test on dev.oneleif.com and the designers can make sure that the website looks correct before we release a new version. And that's really important to make sure that you have separate versions. So if you break something in the development environment, you don't the production server, the one that everybody else is using, isn't impacted in any way until you work out those kinks. And if we go to just the GitHub page, lots of CI/CD software uses a markup language called YAML. I don't remember what it stands for. Oh, wrong project.
Yet another markup language.
Of course, it has that name. Why wouldn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So if we go to in the front end, yeah, .circleci. So you have a config.yml, and so you can see it's a markup language, right? Like it's human readable, right? So you can see at the top level we have jobs that you run. So we have one that checks out our code, it installs the dependencies for the code. So like if it's running on a server, right, you want to be able to have those dependencies installed to your machine. And then it tests the code, and we have tests that'll go in and make sure that like, if you click on a button, it does the corresponding action. It builds the code, right? So it'll compile it and whatnot, and making sure you have all the dependencies and whatnot. It'll deploy it out to wherever you're going to go. So in this case, it'll deploy it to our Amazon S3 bucket, and then it'll do. And then there's a separate work for build and deploy that does this whole process, right?
Yeah, so basically jobs are the kind of like smaller tasks that you later on put into workflows.
Yep, and if you're familiar with any sort of scripting language, these things will feel familiar to you. They are literally like a job is literally a script that does something, like, right. So the checkout job would literally do a git pull, for example, or a git checkout on a different branch, whatever your server happens to use.
Yeah, exactly.
So that is DevOps at a very high level. The goal of DevOps is really to make the lives of developers easier and to lower the time to make changes, right? You don't want to, every time you change your code, you don't want to take a week to deploy it out there because you forgot how the configuration worked last time. It prevents you from wasting a lot of time and maximizing the money that your company would make due to efficiency concerns.
Yeah, also they are working on setting up the whole environment for your application. Like you probably will give them info. Okay, we need this, and this, and they will set up for you and make sure it's automated. And if you need another environment with slightly different, I don't know, some dependency, they'll probably need to just copy all the scripts, change one thing, deploy it, and you will have it in 1 hour, not 2 days.
And what's really nice about that is then you, as a front end or a back end developer, you don't have to context switch, right? You can sit there and you can keep doing the thing that you're good at, programming the front end, programming the back end, not having to spend weeks Googling how all these workflows work, because the DevOps engineer, that's their entire job, is to know how these things work. So it's kind of a separation of roles. That way the whole company runs smoother.
Yep. You still probably need to know something about the Docker if you want to use it, because you need to set up the Docker probably yourself, as you are the person who knows the application like the most. But yeah.
Um, for a little bit of an intro, Arcus and I have been working on a little bit of a wiki. If you go to the OL website repository and go to the wiki, we started keeping some level of documentation for how we deployed to AWS, how we set up the domain, SSL certificates, basically doing all the configuration to make it so that the server will host our website correctly. And then I know Arcus has done some extra notes on how we set up Circle CI and whatnot that I should probably go update and make more public and easy to read.
Yeah, maybe.
Might be useful for the future when we do other projects.
Yeah. Like I think configuring circles is not too difficult. Like the documentation is pretty good for that, and there are a lot of examples how to set up something. Like they have many examples for, let's say, nightly builds, because some companies are using this. Like they are doing all sorts of changes, and they don't want to build their application with every change. They're just doing nightly builds. So every night they start a build, and in the morning you have ready build for testing, right?
Yep, and that's also, we did that at my last company. And the beauty of nightly builds is that when you come in the morning, you just check your email, and if any of the builds crash, usually it'll send you an email, and it'll give you like debug logs, and it'll say, your app crashed on this line of your program, and here's what went wrong. Um, and in a bigger scale company, you want to do nightly builds because there's so many um, things happening that you don't want to constantly be building. So that's a good point, Arcus.
Yeah, and I would encourage everyone to try to use some CI tool. Like even if you don't deploy it to any AWS or something like that, just for running your test with every commit, and to get familiar with it, how it works, how to set up this.
Yep, and you'll probably only need to do it once, and if you take good notes for yourself, the process will be the same every time.
Yeah, exactly. And Circus, like I think most of the providers is free for open source projects.
Yeah,
So don't need to pay anything for that.
so what we're saying is there's no reason not to try it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, guys, anything else we want to chat about? We're at about the 45-minute mark. We hit on all the fun topics. I feel like we did a pretty decent job of explaining them.
We should maybe I don't know. I was just going on the thing of like the CI and CD. At least on GitHub, we have some Circle CI, and also some of the just GitHub actions that are for the bunny hop, the one leaf bunny hop one, and then also Swift UI kit to run the test on every PR or every build. And then for bunny hop, it actually builds the Unity project for a platform. We'll have to make those like more public or like try to share them more because like Arcus said, that's how I learned or got anything done, was going off of examples. It's pretty easy to write after you do look at some examples in the documentation, but it's not something that you can just kind of start at and start writing and everything. There's like special things for everything, like steps or environment variables or Docker containers or anything like that. So, but yeah, we'll have to share those.
So yeah, you can see Zach was talking about the bunny hop project. This is a Unity game, and we were adding tests into it to make sure that the Unity project was never messed up in between code changes. So you can see that in GitHub, you can go to the Actions tab and set up a workflow so that when something happens, you do something. So in this case, when a pull request is submitted or merged in, it builds to Linux, Windows, and Mac and makes sure that nothing broke on any of those platforms. So you can see in the YAML file, we have the name of the workflow, then we say on pull request or a push to master or development. Our environment variable will have the Unity license, and then the jobs that we'd run is we do a README workflow. So it'll run on an Ubuntu server, and it will check out the code, run any of the tests, build the project, and then output any issues or the status of completion. Which is super nice, and I'd highly recommend doing it on just about every project. I personally was hesitant about it because I didn't have a ton of knowledge on how tests work, and I didn't see them as useful. And as I got people on the project, I found that with Unity specifically, right? If we just go to one of the closed pull requests, like let's go just look at this guy. You can see that the files that are changed, if it's like a scene file that holds objects in a scene, it's this giant JSON file that's kind of hard to understand what exactly is changing. It's not necessarily human readable. While the variable names are human readable, like this doesn't really tell me what happens, right? So adding in tests to make sure that the scene is set up correctly prevents it from, maybe one of the people on my project accidentally hit delete or accidentally hit undo and something broke. Those tests really make sure that I don't approve of a pull request, pull those changes into development, and then I try to load up the game and it doesn't work. Then we have to go through that whole process again to figure out what thing went wrong. The test kind of prevents that from happening. So while it does take a little bit of time to get them up and running, they are invaluable as your project keeps going on, right? Like if you're just gonna do a one and done super quick project, don't worry about it. Actually, I would say still do it just to learn. But if you're going to do any project that has more than one team member, or you're going to be working on it for a while, I'd highly recommend it because it will cut down on the time that it takes you to make modifications to the project as time goes on.
Yeah, I would say that tests are like small documentation for your project because they basically say how it should work. Like if you don't have any other stuff like documented, the tests say when this happens, this should be the output or something like that.
Yeah, like if you're too lazy to write up documentation or a wiki on how things should work, or you don't have like a rigid list of requirements, if you do have a list of tests that say when you hit this button, it should take you to a new page, or when you I don't know, scroll down, the sticky header should stay on top, those type of things. It's really, like Arca said, it really does lay out the rules of your application for you in the test.
Yeah, and like you said, like onboarding new members to the project, it's easier when you have tests because if they mess something up because they didn't know about something about some rule in your application, they will be like hit with tests that test didn't like pass because they fucked like something. Yeah. In the middle of sentence, I forgot that I'm on the stream.
I heard you get really quiet. It's like, oh, he noticed.
Sorry, guys. It's almost 3 a.m. My time, so.
Well, we appreciate you being here.
Yeah. See ya, night, man.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping the stream was useful for you guys. We did some things at a really high level. I'm hoping this at least gives you a starting point for you to go start Googling things and get just an understanding of how these things work, because they are really important. Anything else, boys?
If a repository doesn't have examples, I look at the tests.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, exactly.
Susie wants to say something.
I said boys, but like I'm here.
I
Okay.
I haven't heard your voice. I'm sorry.
I'm here. Just
I'm sorry.
That was it.
Making me just point at me and shame me. Got it.
Yeah, like basic example when I'm using tests for documentation is right now when I'm rewriting our backend to paper 4 because not all stuff is documented. So I'm gathering knowledge from tests.
And that's another important thing. If you're upgrading versions on one of your dependencies, having those tests is super important. That way you don't have to go in and manually test every single feature and see if it still works when you change something.
Yeah, exactly. And if you have tests and there's some tool for that, you can set up automatic dependency update with CI, for example.
Huh, I didn't know that was a thing.
Last thing I'll say is at my work, we got our unit tests to work and all that. That's great. But then we got our UI test to take screenshots of our app so that we can use those for the app store. But pretty much, yeah, if we do that with actual CD or a CI and get those built every time, then we can see the test pass. But then we could also potentially just see pictures of the actual app and make sure everything's right by just looking at some images too.
That is
and
so cool.
see the test pass. So
I never
yeah,
thought that was
like-
even a thing. That's so awesome.
yeah, and it's like once you do that, it's like I love how cool it is that every time we get a PR up or every time it's merged in to develop for your project, that anyone can just kind of see the latest build, and now you don't have to worry about, okay, now I do a Windows build and now a Linux build and now I got people want a Mac build, and now like most of those are already done.
Yeah, I remember when I was working on mobile apps, we had this problem that we spent so much time on building apps like locally because the client wanted this change or something like that. Then we set up this CI and it was like, oh man, like living in clouds.
So what we're getting at here is test, test, test. Always test. Look into test-driven development if you haven't yet. It is very important. I need to get better at it myself.
What about test-driven development versus behavior-driven development?
Test-driven development. It's always test-driven development.
What?
Do you want to explain the differences, Zach?
No, I think we've gone on long enough.
That might be that's probably a separate talk. Yeah.
I definitely think that's a separate thing because I think definitely checking out test-driven development after we just talked about that would be better than be like, oh, here's a new candy.
We should add in test-driven development to the C# and Swift streams. I'm adding that to my notes. How to do tests in .NET.
I'll have to do that.
Well, guys, thanks everybody for watching. I got nothing else for you. Yeah, stay safe.
Yep.
Keep-
See ya. Bye.
bye everyone.
See ya.